Hey, F1 fan. We all know that Formula One is a high-stakes sport, not just on the track, but off it too. Lately, things have been getting pretty tense between the drivers and the FIA, and honestly, it's not looking like it's going to calm down anytime soon. We're talking about fines for something as simple as swearing, and even penalties for wearing jewelry. It's safe to say that the drivers are getting fed up. Now, I'm sure you've noticed how these fines and rules seem to be getting a little ridiculous. And that's exactly what the drivers are saying too. The Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA, has finally had enough and issued a powerful statement. It's not just a complaint, it's a declaration of war, in a way. They're calling out the FIA for their meddling, their overreach, and the way they've been treating the drivers like kids. But what exactly led to this boiling point? Why is everyone suddenly up in arms? Let me give you a quick rundown. Recently, there have been some major controversies. Take Charles Leclerc, for example. He was fined for swearing during a press conference after the Mexico City Grand Prix. Then, not too long before that, Max Verstappen had to do community service for the same thing in Singapore. Seriously, community service for swearing? And don't get me started on the FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and his comments about cleaning up the drivers' language. So, what's going on here? Why are the drivers so upset? Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And today, we're going to dive deep into what's behind all of this and what it means for the sport. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Before we get into the details, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us grow, and we're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Together, we can make it happen. Alright, now let's talk about the letter from the Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA. This letter isn't just a simple complaint, it's a full-on manifesto. The drivers are laying out everything that's been bothering them, and it's not just about fines or swearing. They are calling out the FIA and its president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, for the way they've been micromanaging every little thing. And let me tell you, it's clear they've had enough. In the letter, the GPDA starts by addressing the issue of driver misconduct, and let's be honest here, the use of quotation marks around the term is nothing short of sarcastic. The drivers are basically saying, really? This is what you're focusing on? They are not happy about the fines for swearing or even the fact that they are being treated like children. And to make things crystal clear, they demand the FIA stop policing every little thing they do. The letter also targets the tone and language used by Ben Sulayem. You see, Ben Sulayem has made some pretty controversial statements in the past about swearing, and he's been publicly calling for a crackdown on drivers using bad language. But the drivers are pushing back. They've had enough of the parental attitude from the FIA. They argue that swearing in the heat of the moment, especially when they are racing at the highest level, isn't the same as trying to insult someone. It's more about expressing frustration or simply being authentic. The key point here is the way the drivers are framing it. They are not asking for a free pass to do whatever they want. They just want to be treated like adults who are fully capable of handling their emotions and their behavior. And really, it makes sense, right? These are some of the best drivers in the world. They've earned their place, so why are they being treated like school children? And let's be real for a second, the FIA's interference in this situation just doesn't sit right with them. When you think about it, the FIA is supposed to be there to ensure fair play and safety. But instead, they are focusing on policing language and appearances. Doesn't seem like a good use of their time, does it? I want to hear what you think. Do you think the FIA should back off a little? Or should they stick to their guns and enforce the rules? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to vote in the poll we've got going on today. Now, let's dig deeper into why the drivers are so upset about the FIA's behavior and their interference with how they run their lives, on and off the track. The issue goes beyond just fines and swearing. What really seems to be bothering the drivers is the way they're being treated as if they don't have a voice or any control over how they express themselves, especially when it comes to their personalities and authenticity. A perfect example of this is FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem's comments about how drivers should control their language. He made headlines when he said that F1 drivers need to avoid swearing on their radios during races. In his mind, F1 is a proper sport and needs to distinguish itself from other forms of entertainment, like rap music, where swearing is often part of the culture. And while Ben Sulayem didn't directly say it, the implication was clear: he wants F1 to be more classy and less raw, like hip-hop. Now, this might sound like a small issue, but for the drivers, this was the tipping point. They felt like Ben Sulayem was completely out of touch with who they are as individuals and athletes. Take Lewis Hamilton, for example. He spoke out about the racial undertones of Ben Sulayem's comments, pointing out that suggesting F1 should avoid being like rappers is, frankly, stereotypical statement. And for someone like Hamilton, who has always championed diversity and equality, this hit a nerve. So, what do the drivers want? It's simple: they just want to be themselves. They are not asking for permission to swear all the time, but when they do use bad language in a heated moment, they don't want to be fined or treated like misbehaving children. This is a high-pressure sport, and emotions can run high, especially in the heat of the race. It's natural, right? But what's concerning here is the FIA's increasing control over how the drivers express themselves. It's one thing to ensure safety and fairness, but when it comes to how the drivers communicate or show their frustration, is it really the FIA's place to step in? And the fact that they are spending time on these issues instead of focusing on the real challenges in the sport? That's a major issue. What do you think? Should the FIA be policing driver behavior like this, or should they stick to the essentials, safety and competition? Let me know in the comments below and make sure to answer our poll. Now, let's take a look at something that's been brewing behind the scenes, the financial side of things. We're talking about the fines the drivers are getting hit with, and the bigger issue of how that money is being used. You'd think that with all these fines stacking up, the FIA would have no problem being transparent about where the money goes, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case. In their letter, the GPDA raised serious concerns about the lack of transparency when it comes to the financial penalties the FIA imposes. Last season alone, the drivers and teams combined were fined over $375,000. That's a huge amount of money, and here's the kicker: the drivers have no idea where that money is going. They've asked the FIA time and time again to explain how these fines are being spent. But so far, they've gotten nothing but silence. This is a huge issue, because let's be real, F1 is one of the wealthiest sports in the world, and it's built on the backs of the drivers, the teams, and the fans. So when there's a lack of transparency, it doesn't just hurt the sport's image, it raises questions about where all that money really ends up. Is it going into grassroots motorsport development, as it's supposed to? Or is it disappearing into a black hole, with no real accountability? It's understandable why the drivers are so upset about this. They're being fined for things like swearing, but they don't even know if the money is being put to good use. And worse, there's no clear answer from the FIA about how the funds are allocated. That lack of clarity just creates more tension and mistrust between the drivers and the governing body. They want to know that the money is being used for something that benefits the sport and the fans, not just filling the pockets of the organization. And think about it, shouldn't it be simple to show where that money is going? A few budget records, a breakdown of expenses, it's not that difficult. But the FIA has chosen not to be transparent, and the drivers are rightfully frustrated by that. This is a huge point of contention, and it's something that will only add more fuel to the fire if it isn't addressed soon. The relationship between the FIA and the drivers is already on shaky ground, and this lack of financial transparency only makes things worse. What's your take on this? Do you think the FIA should be more open about where the fines go? Or do you think the drivers are just making a big deal out of it? Let's talk about it in the comments, and don't forget to vote in our poll. Now that we've covered the main issues the drivers are facing, let's talk about the future. What's next for the relationship between the drivers and the FIA after this explosive letter? To be honest, this situation is far from over. The question on everyone's mind is, how will Mohammed Ben Sulayem respond to this public criticism? And more importantly, how will this affect the sport moving forward? One thing is clear, the drivers have made it known they are not going to stay silent anymore. They've tried to handle things behind closed doors, but now, they're airing their grievances in the most public way possible. And you have to wonder, how long can the FIA ignore these concerns? The fact that the GPDA went public with this letter shows just how serious things have gotten. It wasn't just a few drivers speaking out, it was a unified front from the entire association, all calling for change. Ben Sulayem's response will be critical here. If he decides to back down and reconsider his approach, it could go a long way in mending the relationship between the FIA and the drivers. On the other hand, if he doubles down and refuses to listen, it could create even more tension. The drivers have made their feelings clear, they want to be treated with respect, and they want their voices to be heard. The clock is ticking. The FIA president is up for re-election in 2025, and how he handles this situation could have a huge impact on his chances of staying in power. If he alienates the drivers and teams further, it could be game over for his presidency. But if he takes the opportunity to address their concerns and rebuild the trust, he could emerge stronger than ever. As for the drivers, this letter is just the beginning. They've shown they are willing to take action when they're unhappy with the way things are being handled. The FIA needs to recognize that and adjust their approach accordingly. After all, the drivers are the ones who make the sport what it is, they are the stars, the ones fans tune in to watch every race. Now, I want to know your thoughts. Do you think Ben Sulayem should change his ways, or should the drivers just accept the rules? What do you think will happen in the future of this tension between the FIA and the drivers? Drop your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to take part in our poll. That's a wrap for today's video. Thanks for sticking with us through all the details. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support is really helping us get closer to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Until next time, drive safe.